The snow might have delayed us temporarily, but now we're back and we've got a Bears win to talk about. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is Bear Necessities. Yes, welcome to Bear Necessities, the podcast all about the Coventry Bears. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter, and you can find this show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and basically wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson, and joining me as always is my co-host and former Bears player, Craig Cathcart. Craig, how are you doing?
Yeah, good mate. I'm delighted to be able to talk about a Bears win. It was absolutely fantastic. Bit of a mixed weekend of sporting action for me with Liverpool losing, but Ireland won the championship in rugby in the Six Nations. So yeah, it's been a good weekend.
Yes, I can go one better than you on the sporting weekend because my beloved Aston Villa absolutely walloped Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah.
And that was a very nice addition to the Bears winning and to Wales winning on Sunday in the Six Nations. So anyway, enough talk about things that aren't Coventry Bears. As usual, we've got plenty to talk about this week. Later in the show, we're going to look ahead to this weekend's Big Challenge Cup tie at home to Pilkington Recs, and Craig is going to answer more of your AskMrC questions. We're also going to look back on last weekend's victory away to Hemel Stags that we've just referenced there, and we'll hear from Bears head coach Tom Tsang. But first, we've got a couple of bits of admin to do. So first things first, this is your last chance to enter our competition to win an official Challenge Cup match ball from the Bears' last cup game, and that ball has been signed by the entire Bears squad. All you have to do is email us to say you want in, either use a contact form at covbearspodcast.com or go direct using covbearspodcast@gmail.com, and you'll be in with a chance to win. Like I said, just email us, say you want in, and that's it. And if you email us by Friday of this week, that's the 16th of March, you'll definitely be in the hat and a chance to win that signed ball. Second, you may have seen this on the Bears social channels, but we've got some news of some Bears signings to go through. So first up, we've got second row loose forward James Mason. He's joined the Bears. He played for All Gods last year and he represented England at the Student World Cup last autumn. He also made his debut for the Bears in the game against Hemel. Also making his debut in the game against Hemel is another forward, a Midlander, Ben Gray. He's played for London Scholars previously and West Panthers in Australia. Third up, another member of the Midlands Academy has joined the Bears. His name's Cameron Stewart. He converted from Union a year ago and by all accounts he's showing good promise. And finally, a more familiar name, fan favourite and flying winger Jamal Hunt has re-signed for the Bears, which gives us even more quality in the outside backs, and that is lovely stuff. Craig, plenty of good signings there, I reckon, and a couple who are already making waves following on from Sunday as well.
Yeah, well, when I saw the names, I thought Ben Gray definitely looks like he's got some pedigree there, and I think we probably needed a bit more in the pack. Brilliant news though about JAMA, about him coming back. I mean, he's the record try scorer for the Bears. On his day, he's unbeatable. He always works really hard on the pitch, and I had a sneaking feeling when he ended up getting a job in Coventry that he might come back to the Bears eventually, and it's really good news to see him back. It will be really good to see him back in a Bears shirt. He's definitely one of the fans' favourites, and really exciting news.
Yeah, and obviously we should point out that JAMA will be a bit behind on pre-season and match fitness compared to the rest of the squad, so I guess we might not necessarily see him back on the pitch right away, but he has re-signed. And you may well have seen him watching some of the home games this season anyway. So like you say, Craig, I completely echo your sentiments there. Great to see him back in the fold.
Yeah, and I mean, the other two guys as well, again, have got good pedigree. They look, again, like, I mean, I'd said it before, but this is a really strong squad this year. There's been a number of changes to the squad, but the Bears have brought in some really good players and really hungry players, and that will hopefully pay dividends on the pitch this year.
Absolutely. So before we look back on the Hemel game, we've got one last bit of admin. You might remember, those of you listening who have listened to the show all season, you might remember that the first meeting of the supporters group was scheduled to happen at the York game, which obviously got postponed because of the weather. It's looking now like that meeting is going to take place at the West Wales game on the 25th of March, so not this weekend's match. However, hopefully I'm going to be chatting to the person running the group in time for next week's podcast, so do stay tuned for that, and we'll bring you all the news about the supporters group, and like I say, an interview with the people putting it together. Right, let's get stuck into last weekend, where the Bears were in League One action away to Hemel Stags. As I can't remember if we mentioned it or not, but sadly neither Craig or I were able to attend. And I say sadly because, as we've already established, we missed a Bears win. So Bears started quickly, Errol Carter bagging his first try for the club within the first 5 minutes before Dante Morley-Samuels also opened his account a few minutes later. Ben Stead converted that one to make it 10-0. Jason Bass then continued where he left off in the cup game. He added another try, which was converted, took the half-time score to 16-0 in the Bears' favour. And the Stags came out a bit refreshed in the second half, and they did bag a score to make it 16-6. But Bears edged in front again, with Harry Chapman burrowing over to take the score out to 22-6 with Ben Stead's conversion. Hemel did score a couple of times more towards the end to make it a bit more of a nervous one than we might have liked. But the Bears hung on for a fabulous 22-16 win, first league win under the belt. And this is what head coach Tom Tsang had to say to the Bears Twitter feed after the game.
Yeah, I thought we started really strongly. Obviously got up to 16-0 lead, and at that point we were looking pretty good, and we were moving the ball around really well, defending really well. We did make a few unforced errors, individual errors that kept Hemel interested and kept them in the game. Similar to when we played Diston, really just took the wind out of our sails a little bit, just those little errors. We were pretty confident in at half time. Came out, just needed to start from scratch again, 0-0, come out, but again started off with a couple of penalties and a couple of knock-ons that went against us, and then obviously Hemel got their tails up and got into the game. So happy that we managed to grind out the win. We showed a bit of guts and a bit of character to be able to hold on, because we've done enough to build up a bit of a lead. But yeah, we need to make sure that we can get these errors out of our game, because once we do that, we'll be a good side.
So Craig, we weren't there, so we can't really talk about the match that much, but let's reflect on the headlines here. So we've got a league victory on the board at the second match of Asking, which is much earlier than last season, if memory serves me correctly. We've got first Bears tries registered for Errol and for Dante, some impressive debuts by all accounts, and perhaps most importantly, we've got a team holding out for a tough win that I don't think it's too far-fetched to say they might have blown that last year. I'm thinking of all goals away, for example. So yeah, lots of good headlines to take out of this, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an away game. You want to try and win away games if you can. I think it's from the point of view of, I think people will be looking at the Hemel game and thinking that's a game that the Bears can win. So it was crucial that they went on and won that game. It sounded like at least for 60 minutes, the Bears were well in control. There was some really good stuff played in the first half, really controlled the game and defended well. And, it was really good to see Errol Carter get on the score sheet. He's been impressive since he's come to the club. I felt like he needed a try, to get off the mark. Every winger needs to be scoring tries, and that was really good for him. Ben Stead's continuing his great form. Jason Bass, again, has had a great start to the season and doing really well. And by all accounts, as you say, the guys that came in and made their debut didn't look out of place and played really, really well. Apparently Ben Gray was really, really good. And Lewis Rice Wilson as well did really, really well. So, there's a lot to be positive about. This game shows that we've got players in the squad that can come in and hold their own and do really, really well. There's a lot of competition for places in the team. And as you said, last year there was 2 or 3 games where the Bears started really well, and after about 60 minutes, things just slipped and they put pressure on themselves. And yeah, they conceded 2 late tries here, but as you said, that's a game last year that possibly they might have lost. I mean, I'm thinking, as you said, specifically about the All Goals game. They also had a couple of games against Hemel where they let late scores in to make it much closer than it should have been. So really brilliant to get a result on the board, and loads to be positive about. I mean, there's a big game coming up this weekend, back-to-back wins. The guys will be playing with real confidence now, and it's a real boost for, after the opening game, which was a really tough day, and one which everyone was really disappointed with, to get that first league win on the board. And they can really push on from this. They've got a few home games coming up, and a real chance to put a marker down early on in the season.
Yeah, and like you say, back-to-back wins, chance to make it 3 wins in a row this weekend, obviously without showing any disrespect to Pilkington Recs, but Bears will be favourites this weekend. And then when we get back into league action the week after that, it's West Wales at home, which you'd like to think would be a winnable game. So it feels like this is a really important psychological boost for the Bears to actually get that first win on the board this early in the season, because it did take a while last season as well. And Craig, we were talking before we pushed record about the fact that, and I get it's probably too early in the season to say, but the fact that the Bears have recruited so heavily from the Midlands, you sense that pre-season, the extra time they've had to work on those combinations, the fact that players are not travelling as far for training and therefore probably fresher for training, and that squad is just bonding together. It feels like this is something that's going to work this year, doesn't it?
There was some good performances last year, but there was a lot of occasions, and we said this on the show, where the Bears had 10, 15-minute periods in games where they switched off or they lost control of the game, games that they had been in control of or doing well in. And, I think that, that did come down to possibly the squad not training together as much as they would have liked. Fitness as well was an issue last year. There was a lot of rotation from the subs last year because the fitness levels of some players, and that's been addressed with what the with the recruitment that's gone on, in the off season. And I know that the squad have put in a huge amount of work off the field, they've really trained hard, and the hard work is really, appears to be paying off. If they can keep the intensity of the training and keep working together, hopefully it won't be long before the Bears put together an 80-minute performance. And, did say earlier on in the season we were looking for the Bears to shock a few teams this year, and really hope that's possible. And, it's certainly the squad are on an upward trajectory, which is really, really good.
Definitely. And we should also add that not only did the Bears win, they also then had to make do with malfunctioning showers. So if you check out our Twitter feed, we retweeted a photo from James Gertens showing how they had to basically shower using their water bottles after the game. So good on the Bears for going through with that, and brilliant stuff to get that first league win under the belt. Okay, so still to come, we're going to look ahead to this weekend's Challenge Cup tie, but first, it's time to Ask Mr. C. Right, this is Ask Mr. C, the part of the show where I put your questions to my co-host, and this part of the show is sponsored by York's Tim, for which we are very, very grateful. Now, if you've got something you'd like to ask Craig on a future episode, then don't be shy. Email us a question using the contact form at covbearspodcast.com, or even better, tweet it to @covbearspodcast using the hashtag AskMrC. Right, so first up this week, Craig, it's another question from a guy we've just mentioned, actually, from Bears forward James Gertens. Now, he wants to know who you would say is the most unfortunate-looking Coventry Bears player. Now, I'm going to be kind here, and I'm going to give you a let's call it a get-out-of-jail-free card. And to make it less awkward, I'm very happy for you to answer this question in terms of the guys you played with, because I'm just thinking otherwise, if you diss on one of the current players, your next visit to the Butts Park Arena could be quite a tricky one. So yeah. I'm opening it to your better judgment, but if you want to just pick the most unfortunate looking player you played with, that's fine by me.
Well, either way, I'm screwed, aren't I? I'm not going to be able to. Whoever I pick, I'm going to have someone really, really annoyed with me.
You could just.
I had to think about it. Well, I could. Yeah. Well, my brother thinks he's a bit of a pretty boy, so that's probably not going to be. I did think of mentioning Bears CEO Alan Robinson, but he's quite a bit larger than me, so I probably shouldn't do that. There was one or two Aussies which, let's just say they were a bit caveman-like, but I'm not going to mention any names. But so I'm not quite sure what to say. I had thought about the current squad, and I have to say I think rugby players have changed over the years. The current squad spend a lot of time getting themselves preened after the game and making sure they're looking their best. So maybe a bit of back to basics, boys, and don't worry too much about the looks, is what I would say.
Okay, very diplomatically done. So your answer there was Alan Robinson. Okay, it's fine.
No.
Okay, so second is this one from Fatboy Rob. Now, this was originally sent before the snowed off weekend, but as we record this, the forecast is actually for even more cold times this weekend, so I thought we could throw it in anyway. So Fatboy Rob, he asks Craig, when it comes to watching these early matches of this so-called summer game, do you consider yourself a southerner, i.e. full hat, scarf, gloves, big coat and extra socks? Do you consider yourself a Midlander, which he defines as big coat and a hat, a northerner, which he puts as light jacket and a replica shirt, or a Geordie, which he puts as short sleeve shirt? I would argue a real Geordie wouldn't wear a shirt at all. But anyway, which one do you think you are, or have you got your own version?
Well, I'm pretty old school. When I grew up, we didn't have central heating or anything. We used to get ice on the inside of the windows. No one believes me when I tell them that, but we did. But I have lived in England for quite some time now and lived in the Midlands. And I have to say, at the last Bears home game, which was very, very cold, I did have a hat and a large coat on. So unfortunately, I think I've become a Midlander. So sorry to say.
You've gone soft all these years on this.
Yeah, I've gone soft after living all these years in the Midlands. Yeah.
Fair enough. You can't deny what you are. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And finally, we've got a question from our sponsor, York's Tim, and one that leads us very nicely onto this weekend's preview without me needing to play any jingles or anything. So, York's Tim asks Craig if you reckon Pilks are still as good as they used to be.
So yeah, I think this comes from the Bears had one season actually. I'll tell you what, it's really difficult to find information about old rugby league results and tables and everything else because the structure's changed that many times. It's really, really difficult. But the Bears had one season in. And this is where it gets confusing because there was a few seasons in National League 3, but they actually played one season in the National Conference League 3, which I think still exists. It's when the old National Conference got restructured and they got a Premier Division and then 1, 2 and 3. The Bears actually had one season in Division 3 and that was a big step up for the Bears compared to the teams that they'd played previously. There was teams like Pilkington and I think there might have been Huddersfield Underbank and Kells as well in that league. I think actually that was a real turning point in the Bears' evolution because they were the only, from what I gather, they were the only team outside sort of traditional heartland areas playing in that league. And they put up a really good account of themselves. I think they were in the top half of the table and they had some really tough games. And I think that sowed the seeds really on the Bears entering League One. But yeah, Pilkington Recs were in that league and they finished, I think they finished second, but they were equal on points with Kells and both teams got promoted. But as I recall, the Bears actually had two really close games with Pilkington that year and put in a good account of themselves. There's actually one of the matches on the Bears game at the Butts Park Arena against Pilkington's on the Bears YouTube channel. Well worth a watch. There's a really good try from the Bears near the end of the game, which was just superb, one end of the field to the other. So definitely worth a watch. So yeah, Are they as good as they used to be? I think Pilkington are now in the Premier League, Northern Conference Premier. So that means they're in Division 1, I think. So they've had 2 promotions since then. Obviously, the Bears have gone up. What was it? The equivalent of 4 divisions going into League 1, I guess. So both clubs have moved on from then, but there is a history of them playing each other, which is really good. Pilkington came out on top that year, and hopefully at the weekend the Bears will come out on top.
Yes, so very handily, we'll go into the preview for this weekend. So a reminder before we do that the Bears, they are at home this Sunday, 18th of March, in the 4th round of the Challenge Cup, when they will face Pilkington Recs, one of the lowest ranked sides left in the competition, it should be noted, but not just be noted for point of interest, really. That doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy game for the Bears. Now remember, Bears have never been this far in the competition before, and being as respectful as possible to Pilkington, this is a very, very real chance to take another step towards Wembley and possibly landing a draw with a Super League side in round 5. Now, there are no BBC cameras covering the Bears this time, so if you want to know what happens in the game, you're going to have to join us at the Butts Park Arena on Sunday. Kickoff is at 3 o'clock, I think. I've written that in my notes, but I'm now second guessing myself. I'm pretty sure it's 3 o'clock.
It's 3, yeah.
Good, there we go. Kickoff at 3 o'clock. Gates open from 12:30. And as with the last cup game, this game isn't included in the season ticket if you have one, so do make sure you get your ticket from coventrybears.com. So Craig, you've given us a bit of a history about Pilkington Recs in relation to the Bears and a bit of an idea of what you think about them. This is a big game for the Bears, and we talked about it earlier in the show. A chance for what would be a 3rd win in a row, a chance to make round 5 of the cup, and it's the first of 4 consecutive home games for the Bears now. So it's really important to lay down a marker and to just keep building on that momentum for what's going to be a crucial run of games, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. I mean, I don't recall. I think last year the Bears did have back-to-back wins, but they didn't win 3 in a row. So it would be a massive psychological boost to the players to get a 3rd win on the board. It would fall nicely ahead of a game against West Wales, which the Bears would be hoping to win. And, you can really build momentum, and, confidence is a massive thing in rugby. And, if the Bears players can really believe in themselves going forward, then this could be a really good start to the season. Get a few wins under their belts, get some points scored, score some tries along the way. And, who knows what could happen. The worst thing that can possibly happen is to start a season badly and then constantly be, stressed about the next game and whether or not you're going to get a win. So this is a massive game. I mean, it would do the club the world of good to get through to the 5th round. Again, it'd be first time in the Bears' history. Chance of a big draw in the next round, and I love going to watch the Challenge Cup. You can't beat a cup game, really. You're playing against teams that you wouldn't necessarily play in the league. So, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Pilkington Recs and what they do. No doubt it'll be a hard game. No disrespect to Dissington, but I think Pilkington will be better than Dissington were. Again, though, I would expect a relatively similar theme in that Pilkington will come out hard. They'll put themselves about, and they'll push the Bears really hard in the first half. And hopefully, given time in the game, the Bears' fitness and organisation will start to pay. But Pilkington will fancy their chances. It's a massive opportunity for them as well. But the Bears are at home. The players are playing with confidence, and I can certainly see a Bears victory there. But again, as I said, it'll be a hard game. I think the other factor as well is that teams playing in the National Conference play tough games all the time, so they won't be overawed at all by playing the Bears. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting game, and we'll see how we get on.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling very similar to you, Craig. I think the Dissington game is going to be a good blueprint for how I see this one panning out. And like you, I think and I hope that theirs are ultimately going to be fitter, and we'll just have too much for Pilkington. I can see the scoreline being closer than the Dissington game. So I'm going for a Bears win by 3 scores. I think that sounds about right, because it was quite a large margin of victory against Dissington in the end, because those last 15 minutes the Bears just ran away with it. But yeah, I agree with you completely. I think it's going to be a tough match, but I think we can have confidence that the players will know what to expect, and that Tom Tsang will have got them prepared as well. I mean, he told us after the Dissington game that they'd already talked about not worrying if they were level with Dissington at half time, or even an hour into the game, and I'm sure it'll be very similar messages going into this weekend's game. So yeah, so I'm going for a Bears win by 3 scores. Have you got a prediction in mind, Craig, or is it just a Bears win?
Similar to my Dissington prediction, I think it'll be tight. Certainly, probably in the first half. I think the Bears will pull away near the end. But certainly, as you said, I think it'll be closer, a closer game. I think Pilkington will put a bit more pressure on the Bears line, and defensively they'll probably be a bit better. But the Bears can have every confidence that they're going to get a result here, and they need to just relax and play the game that we know they can play, and they'll have every chance of winning the match.
Definitely so. Well, if you want to know how it all goes down, then make sure you're there on Sunday to see how it all goes. And of course, if you can't make it, then we will bring you all the reaction and analysis on next week's show. But as far as this week's episode goes, we're basically done. Don't forget to use the contact form at covbearspodcast.com to send us your questions for Craig, and to enter our competition to win a signed match ball from the last round of a Challenge Cup. Follow us on Twitter, where we're at CovBearsPodcast, and tell a friend about our show. It all helps, as would leaving a rating or review in the Apple Podcast app if you fancy that as well. And Craig, yep, another show done, and I'll look forward to seeing you on Sunday for some more cup action.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.